Family. Keion Henderson is so cool. He's the founder, CEO, and senior pastor of the Lighthouse Church and Ministries out of Houston, Texas. For years, 20 years plus, he's just been an active leader and bridging cultural divides with relational armchair dialogues. I'm going to have such a dialogue with him in a few seconds, but first I got to share with you that he's doing some tremendous things that connect the culture to faith and faith to culture. This is particularly interesting to me because at this time in our lives, many of us are trying to find those connections ourselves. So not only is he award-winning, he as for the work he's done, I mean, think about it. He's recognized as a CNN Heroes Award nominee, and he's just had all kinds of awards and accolades for his music, which I happen to love. Check the River out. But you know, he's doing work with his new bride, Shaunie, that is amazing and is global and is impacting at a very local level. So I want you to just get ready to enjoy a great conversation with an incredible human being, Pastor Keion Henderson. So I'm all pumped up by Holy Live, Pastor Keion, and it's a blessing and so exciting to have this conversation with you.
Oh my goodness, let me tell you, my wife is such a huge fan of yours. When I told her that I was going to be on with you, instead of congratulating me, she just told me about all of the encounters that you all have and how much she loves you. So this is amazing to be on with you, and congratulations to all that you have accomplished. As a woman in a male-dominated field, you are such an inspiration, and it is my honor to be here with you.
Well, we both know where the praise goes, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Pastor, you inspire and spread the gospel to so many people. I mean, 15,000 active members with over 800,000 weekly viewers. I think you've got over 1 million followers. Let's begin by talking about the Lighthouse Church and Ministries in Houston.
Yeah, so I started that church in the year 2009. And so that was right on the precipice of the Great Recession. Remember, Obama was in office. The housing bubble was at its precipice. The economy was it was daunting, and everybody was getting laid off. You know what was going on in Detroit. You remember all of that. And here I am talking about starting a church and opening doors when the doors to everything else was being closed. And so started with 5 people, with a small family in the living room of a house. And I made them a promise. I said, if you can bring some other people who are interested in this movement, I'll consider being your pastor. This was the Johnson family, Tandy and Jessica. I'll never forget them, sitting in their living room. Well, let me tell you, they got a church, a small Baptist church, rented out the basement of the church. And I want to use your sensibilities. I want you to smell the mildew, right? That kind of church. I want you to smell the grease and the fried chicken from all of the funerals. And we're in that basement. They had 132 people who showed up to the first interest meeting, wrote all of their name down on a legal pad and said that they wanted to be members of the church. And so we had 132 join the first day. We had 800 join in the first couple months, 1,500 in the first year, and we've had no less than 1,000 every year. And this past year was our biggest year. We had 3,300 people join our ministry in the past 12 months. So it's been one amazing journey, and I'm sure we'll get into it along the way. A lot of bumps in the roads, a lot of second guessing myself, lots of questions whether or not I was able or willing or capable. But it has been an amazing journey so far.
You know, that just inspires me so much, because when I think about my own journey, I have needed to keep my faith strong and to keep it present. Learning about you through your and my relationship with Bishop T.D. Jakes, I was inspired by your story of the first time you knew you wanted to be a pastor. Will you share that with our family present?
It's amazing. He literally, I have a text message alert across my phone that says his name and now. He's literally texting me right now. everything that I know about pastoring at this stage, I learned from him. But the truth is, had I met him prior to being reared by who raised me, I wouldn't have been ready for ministry on the level that he does it. I was raised in a small Baptist church, Trail Life Missionary Baptist Church, 2323 West 11th Avenue in the city of Gary, Indiana, where I was born and raised. At the age of 14, I tell my pastor that I believe that I've been called to the gospel ministry. I preached my first sermon 7 days after I told my pastor that God was pulling on me to preach. And I preached a sermon called Faith, Where Is Yours? Right in the pulpit on a Sunday morning, 7 days notice, 10-minute sermon in front of 1,200 people with no experience. And I preached every Sunday from then on. I got in the neighborhood that I lived in. I lived in the projects, and by a man named Marvin Davis, who gave me the laundromat to start a church in. I had 17 members at 17 years old in a laundromat, literally listening to the washing machine and dryer in between cycles, in between thoughts. The first
keeping the beat
church,
for you, right? Keeping the beat
just,
for you.
You can hear the quarters going down the Pepsi machine and the Coca-Cola machine as people are coming in, not interested in what I'm talking about, but looking at this 17-year-old guy talking about Jesus lives and all of that. I go to college on a basketball scholarship to a place called Fort Wayne, Indiana. I went to Indiana Purdue University, Fort Wayne, and Ms. Janice, when I got there, I started a church. It seems like I started a church everywhere I went. I started a church with 5 people. Now, you're probably gonna laugh at this. I'm 21 years old. I'm a senior in college and a full-time basketball scholarship athlete and taking 15 credit hours of college. While being a senior pastor, started a church with a lady named Shaunie Henderson, who was 72 years old. She got 4 of her friends. So my second church started with 5 people, everybody over the age of 72, and I was 21. And I remember they fell asleep on my first sermon, and I called my pastor and said, I'm not cut out for this preaching stuff, because they all fell asleep. He told me, he said, son, if you live long enough, you'll understand that drowsiness is a side effect of medication. He said, I guarantee you that everybody is on medication. Preached that sermon and started that church. And that was really where I cut my teeth in learning how to preach, because imagine this, going to basketball practice at 6 a.m, coming back to the church and teaching Sunday school at 8, going back to practice and finishing conditioning, jumping out of that uniform, getting back into a suit while somebody else did praise and worship to preach. I did that my entire junior and senior year of college.
Well, you know, so many people, Pastor, so many people talk about multitasking, but what you're really talking about is multi-purposing. And there's a difference in a task and there's and purposing. And I just think it's incredible. So now you've got more than 20 years in active ministry and testimony, yet you managed to keep fresh and relevant to the present. I mean, so many people, just with the growth in this last year, it's just huge. How do you do that?
Yeah, because I always make sure that I have my eye on the generation that's behind me, because I am very acutely aware of what I know, but I'm also acutely aware that I don't know some things. And so my strategy has always been to outsource or to connect with my weaknesses and to make sure that I understand. There's an old saying that says that the music that your parents expose you to stays with you for a lifetime. Well, I am aware of the fact that the style of ministry that I was introduced to would stay with me for a lifetime, which means that I would only be relevant to people who aged with me. If I was ever going to be effective to people who are coming behind me, I always made sure that I was influenced by people from that generation. So if you come to our church, we've got about 70 staff members, full-time staff members. We've got people on our staff that are 25 in the same conference room with somebody who's 64. Because
like Sunday dinner, right? Just like the table at Sunday dinner.
Absolutely. And that's exactly, I'm sure in your organization, multinational. I was talking to, Sarah and Nathan, young people right beside you, but I'm sure you have senior executives who have grandchildren who are right along that journey. Because in order to stay relevant, you have to recognize that when you are speaking to the current generation, you're already irrelevant unless you're listening to people who are coming behind you who are deemed relevant. So I've always made sure that I connected with people who are younger than me. But here's the second thing that I think is most important. You cease to be relevant when everybody you surround yourself with has the same career path as you. I do not take much advice from other preachers except for Bishop. Because if that's the case, then we'll all be offering the same meal and same menu. And when nobody pays for similarity, everybody pays for difference. And so I made sure that I connected with CEOs like yourself. And I have a close relationship with the mayor of our city and the congressional leaders and the chief of police, collectivizing my worldview. So that way, when I do speak and when I do lead, I don't lead from a religious expression. I lead from a worldview.
You gave so much in there. I mean, actually, it was as if we were hearing a description of how Jesus led as well. Jesus went into some very non-traditional communities and had some very non-traditional conversations to deliver solid living teaching. And yes. I just think it's beautiful because so many people want this. There's been so much change and so much occurrence over these last 2+ years. Now, I'm sure that you have experienced a lot from the stewarding and the business side of leading in a ministry. What's been the most challenging part of running this ministry for you? Lighthouse, I just love the name. What's the most rewarding thing about it for you also?
So the most challenging is before Bishop, I didn't have an orientation that was congruent with where I thought I would end up. So I saw a vision. I saw big, but I never saw big, right? I imagined big, but I had no experience with big. I had aspirations of effectiveness, but I only saw small and somewhat effective. So the challenging part was reorienting myself, recalibrating myself, and being willing to learn what I hadn't been taught. And I mean teaching an old dog a new trick. I mean learning still today at 41 years old. I still will open the Bible like I've never read it before. And I'm still reading books as if I have no idea about what leadership is. And I'm still watching podcasts, and I'm still, going to your Instagram intentionally just to find out what quote did she post today. Just so coming from a small town where 40% of the people were below the poverty line, coming to a bustling city like Houston where there are millionaires around every corner, I felt like I was an Olympic swimmer in shallow water. Mm-hmm. That's what I felt like.
Mm-hmm. An Olympic swimmer in shallow waters. And, that's huge. It reminds me so much of when I first came to LA, and I came to LA from the deep Southeast. I was born in one of the poorest sections of, I should say, the least economically viable parts.
That is such a great way of saying that.
Yeah, because we were actually rich in a lot of ways. Over these last 20+ years, though, Pastor, you've seen change in people's struggles. I mean, particularly in Houston, where your active members are. Do you see any common issues today they're facing that you didn't see as much even a few years ago?
Yeah, I see women in a much more different prism than I did growing up. I was raised by a single mother. And my mother's idea of success was getting us through school alive. Literally.
Wow.
To make sure that I didn't get in the game. That was success. I didn't even know that women could own companies. I didn't even know that women could run multinational organizations. I had no idea. The only orientation I had was my mother worked at Taco Bell. She made $7 an hour, and success was getting your kids out of high school alive and not pregnant. That is the God's honest truth. And my idea of success was to get a job where I could make $40,000 a year and take care of my family. And I meant family, mom, future wife, future children. I thought 40,000 would do it all because my mom was at 17 to 21,000 our entire life. And then I get to ministry and I see women talking about abuse where I didn't know anything about that. And I hear women talking about glass ceilings. I didn't even know women were trying to climb. And I hear women, so most of our ministry and the people in our church, 85% of our, and I say this word reluctantly, but customer base is the single African-American woman. And I didn't realize that because of the way I speak, as a result of my orientation, I was speaking to my mother and speaking to people who had come from the least economically viable areas around the globe to hear this word about, you know what? I can be what I was created to be, even if it didn't start the way I intended it. Because now my mom lives in that house we always talked about, but God blessed me to do it. And my mom drives that car that she always dreamed about, but God blessed me to do it. And to share that means that there are many ways to get to that end. The means may be difficult. And so I see the lids, the struggle, the pull, the apprehension that women are facing. Because I grew up in a steel mill town. It was granddaddy. It was men. It was hard. It was tough. You stay home while I go get it, and you be here when I get back, and you have the babies. And women shouldn't do this. Women couldn't even preach in the church I was raised in. Women couldn't wear pants. I'm just saying. So to see how far women have come and to connect it to the struggle that I didn't know my mother had has prompted a ministry in me that has drawn women to our ministry because I think I have a unique perspective. But I also love women deeply because I was raised with only women in my house. I never had a father in the home. All three sisters, a mother, their friends lived with us, surrounded by women my whole life. And now I live with my wife and all we have are daughters in the house. So this is my call. And to see that God has used me in a modicum, in a marginal way, if you will, to help women to leverage and to overcome has been the joy of a lifetime.
It's just so beautiful. I mean, let's be candid. Your life is a movie, maybe even a series. Okay, I attended virtually the service you ministered to at the Potter's house right before the holiday seasons, and I texted Hattie and First Lady Sarita and said, "Tell Bishop he's the one. Tell Bishop he's the one." The contribute, in my company, well, what I do, Pastor, is over 70% of what we earn goes back into the company, okay? And we utilize it to develop the people in the company, the communities the company operates in, and to upgrade and upskill, whether that's technology or whether that's talent. The contributions to your Tuesday night ministries all go to Take Action Now, which is a nonprofit you founded that serves the community globally. It's just so wonderful. It's an incredible initiative. We tell our listening family about Take Action Now and how it's impacting people and also how they can get involved or supported if they want to. We're going to be sharing the website link, but please just tell us the vision and why you founded it.
Well, before I do that, can I just tell you how wonderful you are? I've never heard that. I'm talking to you and you're learning things about me, but I'm equally learning things about you and things that I will absolutely transpose, but for your employees to know that 7 out of 10 efforts will be retroactively pointed back at them. That's amazing, number one, but to have that type of vision, to me, it doesn't come from the head, it comes from the heart. So that's just amazing. And I'm almost at a loss for words because I've never heard that before. And I've heard 10%, I've heard 20, I've never heard 70. That's absolutely amazing. Take action. It was birthed out of the fact that I knew that people were coming to church. They were praying, they were fasting, they were worshiping. They were not doing anything. And faith without works is dead. And you can shout and roll on the floor and speak in tongues and dance until your feet hurt. But if you don't do something, and that's a universal truth, it doesn't matter if you're in church or in the business realm, you've got to take action. And so I said, I wanted to build something. And it's our midweek Bible study, which in most instances, the income that comes in during the week goes to the bottom line. We changed our whole structure and said, you know what? We're going to operate our ministry. We only operate, all of our expenses at our church are covered by 1st through 4th Sundays. We save every 5th Sunday and we donate everything that we do during the week. And Take Action is a Bible study, but it's really an exchange. I give the word, they give the gifts, and then we find different apparatuses where we can be effective. Our most recent transaction was, and it was all over the internet, Ms. Janice, it was so sad. It was a young man, he had a wife. She had a brain tumor, I think 4 times over. It started out the golf ball size, ended up being a grapefruit size. They would take it out and it would come back. And she recently had succumbed to the disease. And I was watching on the internet as they had this GoFundMe page. They needed $100,000 to bury her. And I saw that, the money was trickling in. But I went to the person who was running the GoFundMe and I asked him, I said, how much do you need to finish this? And he told me, and we wrote a check on behalf of Take Action because I didn't want the funeral to have to be postponed, waiting on donations to come in for them to finish. So if it isn't paying for the funeral of someone and the expenses for the estate of someone who had succumbed to cancer, it's us going over to Anguilla, what my wife and I got married. And funny story is when we got over there, we go to this cliff, which is one of the most, and I'm a psych, I love beauty. I love serenity. It invigorates me. I stood on the cliff. My wife and I are overlooking the cliff, looking at the beautiful Atlantic Ocean and its blue waters. And right behind us, there are kids playing barefoot, running on rocks and around glass and stray dogs and barbed wire fences, literally right behind us. And I looked at those kids and I told my wife, along with the director of tourism who was giving us the tour, I said, that reminds me of home. Like, you understand what I mean by that? Where
yes,
you get an opportunity to experience opulence, but your soul doesn't feel at home until it gets around. And I don't care how much money you make, I feel at home in those environments. And my heart was broken. I can still see the kids right now as if they're running in my living room. I get in the car and I'm driving. And over there is a British island. So we're on the other side of the freeway and the steering wheel is on the other side. So I'm a little, taken aback. I don't really have all of my sensibility. So I miss my turn. The lady who's in the car with us, Miss Proctor, she says, don't worry about missing your turn. Go to the next street and take a right. When I took a right, Miss Janice, there was a grocery store right on the corner called Lighthouse Grocery Store. It blew my mind so bad that I took a U-turn and I went right back to the property. And my wife and I said, we've got to do something right here. So Take Action, And we're going over, believe next Thursday to do the groundbreaking. We partnered with the government, and we're going to redo the entire park. We're going to put grass down. We're going to rebuild the pavilion. And this is where their island will have all of their parades and Independence Days and all of the things, the cheer camps and the football camps right on this property. I'm just saying that when you come from nothing and you are introduced to something, you still have to keep your heart in that place, even if you lay your head somewhere else. And I've always tried to make sure that I could build something. My vision has always been bigger than what I could do. So I said to all of my constituents, let's take action together. Let's just take action. I'll give you the word. You partner with me. I'll find places for us to take action together. And I know that's a long explanation, but that's how we got started. That's why I do it. To be quite frank, personally from Take Action, I make nothing. I make nothing. It's a nonprofit. The books are out there for everybody to see it. But that's my 70% that you just talked about.
Oh, and you know, you said you gave a lot of conversation to answer a small question. My goodness, I think that it's really perhaps one of the smallest conversations we could have about a big energy. I just see this in my spirit that it's going to continue to grow around the world, and it's those small efforts that make the biggest change, that create the biggest thoughts, and that support the biggest dreams for people at local levels. You came from a very small circumstance. I come from an humble circumstance. As a matter of fact, Pastor, you just mentioned to us that you were born to a mother who worked at a Taco Bell, likely making $7 an hour, raising 4 children. And we're having some big discussions right now at the legislative level about salaries for just these types of food workers. I know it's happening in California and it's being stymied back and forth. But we've got a world ripe with what some people call fatherless sons. Now, we know who our Heavenly Father is. We're talking about boys raised to manhood without a father presence in the home. And in an interview with Bishop T.D. Jakes, you told the story about being a child serving for a local pastor and how you learned that this pastor was your father. You asked him if you were good as his other sons, and he didn't even acknowledge you. Are you comfortable to talk about that with us?
Yeah, do you know that was my first time when I spoke to Bishop Jakes? That was my first time ever mentioning that publicly. And the reason why I did it was because my father had recently died. And I made myself a promise that as difficult as our relationship was, that I would never embarrass him while he had breath in his body. And so I didn't tell the story because I knew he had to live with it. And when he died, and Bishop Jakes and I can't, that man has done more for me in the last 15 years than most people would do for a person in a lifetime. And he called me when my father died. I texted him and told him, he called me and he said, I can't come to the funeral because I would struggle, and he can confirm this, I would struggle being in the room knowing how great of a son you are to me and not be upset with him. So it's best that I not go. And you know, the story is, I was 12 years old and we had a Fathers and Donuts Day at our school. And I got tired of going to that without a father. So I asked my mom one day who my father was. We lived on a street called Melville. Our neighborhood was so small, we only had 4 streets: McCook, Alexander, Melville, and Kennedy. And we were on the 3rd street of those succession of 4s. You crossed the train tracks. That's when everybody's houses got bigger. You stayed on this side of the train tracks. You knew what it was. And I asked my mom, I said, who's my father? And she called all of my siblings in the room. And she said, Dr. Brooks, who's my father, is your father. I mean, the scream that came out of my mouth at that time was deafening, because my whole life I used to pray and ask God that he was my father.
Wow.
I thought he was amazing. He was the pastor of the church. He was one of the most well-known people in the city. His sons, my brothers, I didn't know at the time, were a football star, an intelligent, a bright, brilliant young man named Katelyn III. We got pictures today. He knew Barack Obama and Michelle in the Chicago days before anybody did. We got pictures in our archives now of them as young people. And I wished he was my father. And the day that I found out he was, I lost that hope, because he became flawed in my mind instantaneously. And everything that I thought he was, it just erased. And so that Sunday I went to church, and I went to a Baptist church. So what would happen is the pastor of the church would stand in front of the church, and all of the parishioners would stand in line to be able to greet him. I stood in line and I waited until it was my turn. And when it was my turn, 15 minutes later, I said to him, I said, "Are you my father?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "When were you going to tell me?" He said, "Eventually." That's the only explanation I ever got. And for a long time, stayed angry, and I competed for his attention. And I also learned that when you do the right thing for the wrong reason, you won't succeed. Trying to be a good leader so that he will look at me, as opposed to being a good leader so that the people will gain. That's a bad leadership style, but it was the one that I had. And I found out he was my father. We tried to build a relationship. It was difficult. At first, I would blame him. As a 40-year-old man, I know that I was to blame, because what I was doing was I was judging him based off of a season of his life that I had not yet experienced. And it was only when I got to the age where he had me that I recognized how difficult a decision he had to make when he had a church that was paying him $1,500 a week, a wife that he was still married to when I was born, a mother, my mother, who he was not married to, and a pastor of a church. I understand now why you just can't get up on Sunday morning and say, "By the way, I had an affair and had 2 children by a woman in the choir." Turn to the book of Ephesians. You see, when you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, then you are more apt to have grace for the decisions that they made or did not make. And it was only at the age of 30 that I recognized that I wish I could wake him up and say, "I'm sorry."
Well, I'm certain that Houston and the world and the more than 1 million followers you have are grateful that your life journeyed the way it did. We may question that, and we may not see that as optimum for the children we want in our lives, but it certainly supported that you had a right path. And I told you, I think that your life is a movie, maybe even an epic. And Pastor, we all love those messages in a bottle. One of the messages you cite as being your favorite quote is that you were born looking like your parents, but you die looking like your decisions. Yeah. You are proof of that. Tell us what that means to you in a personal level and why it's so important for us to understand the wisdom of that.
Yeah, because, your life was already planned before you got here. Your parents were picked. You didn't get to pick them. The city you were born in, you didn't get to choose that. You and I could have easily been born in Lagos, Nigeria, or in the Gold Coast of Africa in Ghana. That we could have easily been descendants of an Indian tribe. We could have been anything, but we are what we are, and that is what we are. And so since you don't get to make those choices, you soon realize that your life is a comprisement of the choices that you do get to make. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to be a father to my daughter that she couldn't depend on. I didn't want to be using my past as a crutch for why I was addicted to drugs or why I would be a womanizer or why I had no confidence. I just refused to do it. To this day, I won't do it. And I won't raise a child that way. Your life is a sum total of the yeses and the nos that you speak. And if you say no where you said yes and said yes where you said no, you can alter the direction. My mother always told me to be responsible for my own actions. She told me people don't have to be nice, and when they are nice, they don't have to be nice to you. Listen, I can't take credit for it. She wouldn't let me sulk. She wouldn't let me settle. She wouldn't let me believe that just because we had roaches in our house that we were less than anybody else. She wouldn't let me believe that because we had food stamps that the family across the tracks that had cash was better. She told us that our character could take us. She said, your gift will take you places, but your character will keep you there. She was a class every day. So my blessedness isn't brilliance. It was a mother who was relentless and went from working at Taco Bell making $7 an hour, but she ended up being the regional manager and hiring every one of her children and all of our friends to work at Taco Bell. See, that's how the story started, but it didn't finish there. It didn't finish. She went back to school and learned how to type 100 words a minute and went to a technical institute and became the manager of the organization. It started there, but it didn't finish there. And so she was a great example, still is. My mom to this day, I own a daycare in Houston. My mother doesn't have to work. And she is the only employee that I have that doesn't take a day off.
Say her name, say her first name.
My mother's name is Gwendolyn, her last name is Scott. She still goes to work and works with toddlers every single morning to this day.
Amen. Whew. Pastor, the Cry Out Conference is happening soon. January 27, you'll be speaking there. It's such a wonderful initiative. Tell our family a little bit about it and what you most look forward to with the events like this.
And when you say family, I feel like I'm in there now. Like I feel like we're all in this together. We're all family. And I am actually, I'm blessed to be able to host this conference because I believe the future goes to those who cry out. Like, you know, the Bible says that the children of Israel were in the wilderness and they didn't have this and they didn't have this, but watch the Bible says, and then they cried out to the Lord. And every time you hear them say, the Bible says they cried out to the Lord, you see God respond. So this conference is actually geared towards bringing thousands of people together so that we can make a unified sound, whether it be through worship or through business, through mental health. We're going to cry out in different ways, get God's attention, get to the finish line of some of these dreams and initiatives that we've started, and become all God has created us to be. So we're here in Houston, January 27th, 28th, 29th. The website is thecryoutexperience.com. We've got Pastor Mike Todd, we've got Travis Green, we've got Chandler Moore. I mean, the list, Tim Godfrey, who is one of the largest singers from the continent of Africa, John Hanna out of Chicago, Illinois. And you know, I was going to ask Bishop Jakes to come. I never asked him. I said to him, I said, Dad, let me try to do one thing without you. I just wanted to see, because you know, once you call him in, here comes everybody. But I said, no, he's been working so hard. I said, you know, just let me try to do this one. And then I said, if it don't work, I'll call you the day before. You just come on over here and get it together. He's got my back. He's ready to do it. But it's going to be amazing. People are coming from all over the world to this. It's going to be amazing.
It truly is. It already is. It's already happening in our spirit. Let's talk about your book, though. It's called The Shift, Courageously Moving from Season to Season. And it's been an incredible success with so many people having read it and learned from it. What was your inspiration for writing it, Pastor? And what were some of the biggest challenges you had in doing that? It's an incredible book.
Yeah, the challenges was the first chapter is called Death, Divorce, and Daddy Issues. That'll tell you how difficult it was to write, because I couldn't get out of the first chapter without being transparent. So the day that I bought the church here, we got a building in Houston that's about, it's nearly 100,000 square feet on the north end, one of our campuses. And the day that I was scheduled to close on that building, my grandfather, who was actually like my father, he died. So I had to postpone closing because he died the day it was supposed to be, we were supposed to be at the title company. So death. So that the start of my journey here in Houston started there. He dies. 30 days later, my uncle, which is his oldest son, while I'm in closing, this is crazy. I couldn't go to close the first time because my grandfather passed. While I'm signing the papers on the $7 million building, my uncle dies while I'm signing the papers. And I don't know that he dies until they let me finish signing. And then they waited until we got to the church and gave me the bad news. So I entered this new building on the precipice of my oldest uncle dying. 3 days later, my cousin, his daughter dies. So I start off with death. Then after having been married, I get a divorce. And then I realized that the struggle with the death and the divorce wasn't because of the death and the divorce, it was because I hadn't dealt with the daddy issues. And so all of this is going on at the same time. And I said, I got to write this book. I got to write this book because my ministry is geared towards hurting people. And I don't want to be the kind of pastor that wants people to think that I fell from heaven, because at that moment I become irrelevant and unusable to those who need to see something similar to their experience, believing that God can turn it around and turn the dark night into midday. So it was a struggle. There were a lot of tears writing that book. I had to relive a lot. I had to rethink a lot. But I said this when I wrote it. I said, all I did was put my pain on paper and asked everybody else to tell me what they thought. And that was the name of the book. The reason why I called it The Shift is because while I was pastoring and while I was playing basketball, my coach said to me one day, we were getting ready to play Michigan State University, Miss Janice, and he said to me, there's some NBA scouts here to watch you play. And he said, the problem is I don't know how good you're gonna be because you don't ever have a full practice. You're always teaching Sunday school. You're always preaching. And he said, and the guys are starting to murmur about the fact that you only practice half the time. So if you're going to do this, you're going to have to commit to basketball. So he said, I give you an ultimatum. His name is Doug Noel. He knows this story to this day. I live with his son, Brad, as a college roommate. He said, either you're going to preach or you're going to play basketball, but you can't do both. And I said to him, he said, what's your answer? I said, Coach, I've been saved since I was 6. I've been preaching since I was 14. The answer is easy. I'm gonna play basketball. I'm gonna play basketball and I'm gonna make as much money as I can. And here's my exact words. And I'll buy God a church with the money that I make from the NBA. I said that at 4:00 in the afternoon. At 8:00 that evening in the basketball game against Middle Tennessee State University in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the Hilliard Gates Center, I tore my left knee up. Every ligament in my left knee was torn in the basketball game 4 hours after I picked basketball over God. And the name of the book is called The Shift because my knee shifted. That's what I was depending on. My mind also shifted. That's the thing that God wanted to use. And sometimes God will shake up the thing that you think you got going for yourself so that he can really get you operating in the area that you need to be operating in. And that's why I called it The Shift.
My goodness. And I know in our family, all of them have read this book. Great shifts are going to happen in their lives. It's just so incredible. You know, Pastor, I was talking with a young lady, Angelina Darasaw, and she talked about pain, and she was saying how my lessons on pain helped her. And for her shift occurred through divorce. I mean, everybody has pain to some degree and have to learn to work their way through it, then work their way from it. What message do you hope others are taking away from your book, if they could just take away one main overarching message.
No,
And I want them to get into it. I want them to read it. They're going to read it.
That sentence you just said has redefined what I would want people to learn from it. Because you just said we can move, you said through pain, but you have to move from it. You said something like that?
Well, see, here's what I was teaching at the time, and she's followed me for a long time. And she said, Janice, you actually caused me to start my business. And she was saying, I was teaching on pain, and I taught there are 3 elements that you have to grow from with pain. The first is you ask yourself, what can I do in this pain? It's foolhardiness to not acknowledge pain, to bury it, okay? The second is, what can I do despite this pain? And the third is, what can I do from this pain? It's talking about growing and acknowledging each phase of it. I'm a very Trinity-based person, so most things and most lessons occur in 3s in my life. Artists will tell you most beauty is achieved with elements of 3, whether it's 3 colors, 3 items, 3 shapes, or, so it fell to me in that way. And I shared it up from that place. And she said it really created a difference in her life. It
just created a difference in mine. And if I could tell anybody, that's what I mean by courageously moving from season to season. Like, when you're in pain, you still have to operate. When you're fearful, you still have to do it anyway. When you lack the confidence, you still have to show up, and the discernment that's necessary to arrive at a place of destiny, and the tenacity that's necessary. I can't ever imagine doing anything big where I didn't have a little timidity. I'll be honest. I mean, recently we built a building here in Houston. During the pandemic, the building is $7 million building. Every promise the contractor made us, he has not kept. And so here we are, where we could have called the loan on this $7 million building months ago when the interest rates were low. We couldn't call the loan because the building wasn't finished and the interest rates kept inching higher. So now here we are closing at 6.75 when we could have closed at 3.75. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And anybody in the family knows that when you talk about those type of percentage points on a mega loan, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in additional principal and interest payments on a monthly basis. So here I am, starting this building thinking that the mortgage was going to be $20,000, closing it where the mortgage is $40,000. Mm-hmm. Not having yet furnished it, not having yet staffed it. And so here come all of the expenses, and I'm talking about recent, and I'm still talking about the ship courageously moving from season to season. Here I am with an additional $80,000 to $100,000 in basis, not over the top, not fluff, just basic, essential capital and expenditures that have to be tacked on to an already heavy load. In an economy where people are fearful, backpedaling, and I'll say to the family, and you guys got Miss Janice here, just to let you know, this is not the time for you to backpedal. This is actually the time for you to step on the gas and move forward. But that's for another podcast. I actually was almost afraid of what was getting ready to happen, with an additional $1.2 million being added to the bottom line without furnishing, without utilities, right? Without maintenance costs, another $500,000 parking lot that has to be done. It's just insane. Well, I get a call on the phone from a company that says, we are in the area and we need to rent a space. And we heard about the space that you just built and want to know if we can come over and look at it. Mm-hmm. This past week, I signed a contract with the building not even being finished. They paid 80% of the mortgage 100% of the furniture costs, 80% of the utilities. I mean, it's amazing. That's why you got to have fear and do it anyway. Because had I folded up shop and said we were not going to do it, then I wouldn't have given God an opportunity to blow my mind. And every once in a while, you got to just go forward and forge forward, feeble and weak and faint, and just believe that God can do it. You got to courageously move through season to season. What can I do with this pain? What can I do from this pain? And you can always do something. You can always do something. You're never done. It's never over. You're never out of the game, especially not as a child of God. Weeping endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning. We're never out of the game. And we don't fight for victory. We fight from victory. And this is another thing that I've learned. I've learned that God loves me so much that he will never give the victory to anybody who takes advantage of my vulnerability. God's got my back. Let the weak say I'm strong. Let the poor say I'm rich. And so I speak to the family today, those of you all who are watching, you got to courageously move. You can't be weary in well-doing. You'll reap a harvest if you faint not. The race isn't given to the swift nor the strong, the battle to the strong, but the one who endures to the end. So you're looking at Miss Janice and you say, oh my gosh, she's successful. No, what she is a fighter. Success is the byproduct of not giving up when you could have. Success is the byproduct of not allowing where you were born to dictate where you finish. Success is the byproduct of starting in one place, but continuing the journey until you get to the next place. And every person listening to us right now, you are absolutely capable of doing the same thing that you admire. And listen, I'll stop here. God never exposes you to anything that he doesn't intend for you to repeat. So if he exposes you to greatness, that means that he wants you to be great. If he exposes you to high level of thoughts and idioms of thinking, then that's because you are supposed to learn from that environment and go create your own atmosphere. Now I got to stop because that's the kind of stuff that gets me excited and gets me going.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's like, okay, look, you drink yours and I'll drink mine. Mine is tea. My goodness. You know, I'm sitting here right now, Pastor, in a building that I own. And for years, people thought it was part of the Toyota North American corporate complex when Toyota was in Torrance, California. And they thought it was too and tried to buy it. And I was so concerned about my building. And I called on a friend who actually worked at Toyota. He got me very straight about that. He's a pastor. His name is Reverend J.L. Armstrong. And he's a minister at Fame Church out here in Los Angeles. He actually was the pastor who introduced me to Bishop T.D. Jakes, which is how I came to be such a follower of yours through your participation and connection. And so that's just for the family to know. But here's the thing. I called him over when I first bought the building and I, was so concerned about it. And I'm one of those kind of people who grew up with those church sisters who kept the money right in here,
Absolutely.
And Candy too, in case you got fidgety in the chair. They pull all kinds of stuff out of there. And I called Reverend Jay over to pray with me for the building and to bless the building. And he's out there sprinkling holy water and stuff. And I said, wait a minute, I thought we were going to do it on the inside. He said, no, we're going to cover this from the outside to the inside. And I said, what if some of your coworkers see you? He's an executive there. And he said, listen, understand something. I work at Toyota. I work for the Lord. And the second thing he told me was, God is never going to give somebody else something God intends for you. And as I was sitting here listening to you, his words just kept coming to me throughout your messaging. You are just doing so much incredible work. And I think for so much of our family are business people. You have this L3 program that I'd love you to talk about. And I know you're teaching leadership principles through it. Can you talk about that accelerator program for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'm actually working with 89 people right now in our business accelerator program because although we do have live events, what I'm loving more is seeing individuals matriculate through the process and seeing their results. So we'll do the big events, but we'll come back, and the accelerator program is myself and my wife now that we are a unit. We absolutely take these individuals in our program, and for 3 months, we walk them through everything that we know. And let me tell you how we get them through everything we know. See, there's a difference between everything we know and knowing everything. Because I believe that a wise person is not a person who has all the answers. A wise person is a person who knows where to get them. And so what we do is we connect with people such as yourself and other business leaders that we have. And for those portions of business that we're not strong in, we abdicate that to people who are strong in it, and then we bring them in to speak to our group. And so we've helped people get from not even having an LLC to just operating in the kitchen with a DBA to now we have several $1 million businesses in our accelerator program. And so that's something that we're very passionate about. And we do that every year with a specialized group. And we don't take in more. And here's another thing that I've learned: never take on more relationships than you can manage. Because when you take on relationships you can't manage.
This is the L3 program you're talking about.
Yes, I'm talking. We call it the accelerator program, right? Okay. So the L3 program, and the website that we use for that is Maximize Your Business Challenge, and so that's where people go to sign up for that. Obviously, at the time of this recording, the one that we have is closed because that group is going through it from December all the way through March. Then we'll open it up again and we'll get a new class in because we want people to graduate and get through it. And so leadership, learning, and lifestyle, those are the three things that we talk about. And the lifestyle element is not, cars and houses. Anybody can get that stuff. We're talking about anything from healthy eating habits to time management, to enjoying the presence of now. One of my favorite books by Eckhart Tolle is The Power of Now, that most of us miss the opportunities of a lifetime because we're either disenfranchised by the past or so hopeful for the future that we forget to pay attention to the present. And the present is a gift from God. That's why we call it the present.
Well, I think the present is possibly the most exciting time ever. Yes. For ministry and for the church yes. to support entrepreneurship. And I love what you're doing with this accelerator program. Pastor, at the end of this conversation, I'm going to go 4 for 4 with you, and I'll be asking you about the artists and songs you're listening to right now. I'm really curious to hear your take on A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. Now, as do I. You love that song. What does it make you feel? And what does it make you feel and remember as you listen to it?
Okay, so we lived in an apartment on a street called Ellsworth Place. And in my bedroom, there was a broken sewage pipe in the closet. Every time you flushed the toilet, the smell of sulfur would fill my bedroom. That's what I grew up smelling. And I remember my mother got me a Walkman for Christmas. And I hate to say this, but in order for the story to be authentic, I got to tell the truth. There was a store called the Harbor Food Center that was across the field where we lived. And I stole a cassette tape from the grocery store. It was a single of Sam Cooke called A Change Gonna Come. Every night I would lay in the bed, listen, I was born by the river. Every night, listening to it over and over and over and over again. And so I believe, all the way up until I had enough sense, I believe that me listening to that song and channeling The Change Gonna Come is what made my mom get enough to get us out of there. And so a change came. That song takes me back to my adolescence because it was at that moment that that song, when it resonated with me, we had moved into our first home that actually had air conditioning. It was the first time I had my own bedroom. It was the first time that my younger sister and I didn't have to share bath water in the tub because my mama started doing better. So I just believe that everything's going to change. I think a change is going to come. I think you have to believe it. And the song says, I was born by a river, by a little tent, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been too hard living. I'm not afraid to die. I'm going up yonder beyond the sky. I go to the movies and I go downtown. Someone keeps telling me don't hang around. All of that is happening, but still the change is going to come.
And a
And
lot of challenge occurred. A lot of challenge occurred for him
yes,
in that last phrase that you spoke about. I go downtown and people tell me, and he was speaking. It was a movement song for civil rights in his
yes,
heart. And it was based in faith. He came out of faith. I remember as a little girl listening to him before he became Sam Cooke, and he was part of, of the religious group. And so it really is personal to me as well. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing it. Talking about music, before you came on to this conversation, my team and I were listening to The River. And in specific, we were listening to Holy. Did you always know you wanted to produce an album? How did that happen for you?
no, I didn't ever want to sing. I had no desire to sing. There was a man named Leon Kendrick, who was the music teacher at my high school, heard me singing a song called Chestnuts Roasting on the Open Fire, walking down the hallway in school. And he grabbed me and said, "You joining my music class." And, when you're hungry for fatherhood, anybody who presents an opportunity to be that. So he was like a father. He would make me do push-ups in class. He just grabbed a hold of me. He heard me singing Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, told me I was going to be in his music class. I got in his music class, and I've been singing ever since.
You were there channeling your Nat King Cole, huh?
Yes, and doing Nat King Cole. I had, at our wedding, we had the Isley Brothers. I love all types of music, and so producing The River, I did The River because I was listening to Sirius XM radio, and the title of the album changed to The River, but it was actually Holy before we released it. And I was listening to Florida Georgia Line sing a song called Holy, and it just hit me. It hit me. I couldn't shake it. And so I went back in and covered it, changed the words and made it a gospel song. They were talking about a young lady. I transposed it and rewrote it and talking about God. And I had no idea that was going to be an album in the top 40. I was nominated for a Stellar Award. I mean, all of these things, you don't go after them. It just happens. And I'm grateful.
Right. Your faith is your currency. And I think that is, if I had to hashtag you, I'd say, here is a pastor whose faith is his currency. We've talked about some amazing things you do to help the community and about your own journey. Can we put the dessert on this feast you've offered us? Now, your beautiful, accomplished, and Christ servant wife, Shaunie. For anybody who's been under a brick and not watched the VH1 3-week special event, Shaunie and Keion's Destination I Do, tell us, how did you two guys meet? And did you know it was love immediately?
No, we met sitting in a restaurant in LA. I was preaching in San Bernardino. We had our first date in the lobby. And she, we both have different versions of that story. I say that she was staring at me and couldn't take her eyes off me. She said that I was staring at her and couldn't take my eyes off of her. But however it went, we did not have a love at first sight experience. We had so much fun at our first date, telling each other what we wasn't going to do and what we were not going to take. Having both been through so much in life, we spent the first 6 hours, didn't discuss love once. We talked about real stuff, life. What do you want out of life? Where are you going? Is there any room for me in your journey? And so, that's how we started. We learned very quickly, though, that we were meant to be together, even though we both were telling each other what we were not going to do. And we both had to eat those words and go back on our promises. And here we are.
Well, my husband, who I speak of him in the present, he's still in my heart. I hope you don't find that weird or anything,
No.
Knowing that he transitioned of Alzheimer's in 2 years ago, but he's still very present to me. And he told me he knew we would be married the moment he saw me, but our story actually evolved the way you and Shaunie did. We actually were tackling the world and tackling business and really enjoying how we could support each other, growing mentally and spiritually. And then he decided, hey, come on, it's time to take it to the next level. And I agreed to take the journey with him. In the destination, you and Shaunie both talk openly and unreservedly about your lives. And this is refreshing and teaching for so many people, Pastor. Now, we know that without a test, there's no testimony, right? And that testimonies come from trials, but also from success and beauty. You're now in a new part of a beautiful love story. And Shaunie is bringing light to the lighthouse with her transition from a basketball wife to your first lady. She shares importantly how Bishop T.D. Jakes and First Lady Sarita continue to steward you both. This is a gift that the two of you are like moving forward with too, and you're sharing it to others. Tell us about it. How did you bring this forward? And you're learning from Bishop and First Lady Sarita, and now you're Pastor and First Lady Shaunie, and you're sharing this forward with the world. Talk about that. That's an opportunity. It can also be a burden because we're talking about the most intimate part of your life.
Yeah, I brought her directly to Bishop Jakes. Literally, we were in LA at a hotel. We met him at his hotel, and we sat atop on the roof of that hotel for 6 hours. And he asked us every question you could ask a person, because he knew we had both been divorced, and he didn't want to see either one of us hurt again. And so he talked to us as if he was our birth father. And it was only then, when we left there, that he looks at us both and says, I've seen a lot of people together, and if you two work at this, you can do this. It was at that moment that the confidence that I needed to override the fear that I had, right? Because, when you get hurt, it's like touching a stove. If it burned you last time, it's going to burn you again. And then you go into it guarded, talking about all of these, I'm not going to, and I won't, and I refuse. And so now you're not even open for flexibility. He put a glass on the table in our final marriage counseling and set it down, and he went on talking. And after he finished talking, he grabs the glass and he drinks the water. And he said, marriage is like this glass of ice. It'll eventually become what it was designed to be if you leave it alone. I mean, it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
What do you and Shaunie have as your vision, or that you're working as a couple to share forward? What's that big thing there? And then we're going to go to 4 for 4.
So we have this thing, we're building this symmetrical brand called Faith and Culture. And I believe that it is time that those two worlds stop abstaining from connectivity. Because everybody that I meet in culture has a faith life, but they are afraid to speak of their faith because of how the faith culture judges the culture. And when we find out that the blood of Jesus Christ has covered us all, and that nobody is better than the next person, I don't care if you go to church every Sunday or you don't go at all, when God starts to calibrate who his children are, there will be people from inside of the church and on the 30th floor of a corporate office that will be considered his own. And so our goal is to make culture and faith, because it is the power that faith will have when it allows culture to walk through the front door. And by culture, I mean business, I mean arts, I mean music, I mean all government, and stop segregating ourselves and isolating ourselves and wondering why we can't be impactful. The reason why we can't be impactful is because we keep massaging the same muscles. We gotta we gotta get to other parts of the body, right? We gotta allow other people to come in. So our goal with whatever influence we have is to get both culture and faith to recognize that we have more in common than we have apart. And I can't wait until the day where it is normal for a rapper to sit on the front of a church and for a minister to be able to go to speak at an event where wine is being served and you're not judged. I just think that we got to figure out a way to get this together and stop being so small-minded. So that is our goal. That is our initiative. We're doing that in a myriad of different ways, through business, through philanthropy, through the way we lead as leaders, through the conversations that we have, the platforms and engagements that we accept, by doing reality TV, but not doing it ratchetly, by doing it with taste and class, and reinvigorating and introducing other mediums of thought to areas. We were number one on reality TV when we did the show, and not one punch was thrown, not one profane word was hurled, not one argument transpired. And now they're calling us, asking us for more. When we asked them, could we do it or pitched it, they said it couldn't be done. But we did it. And so that is our goal, and I know we'll be successful.
And it's amazing. And may my voice be a clarion to your vision. Please remember I offered that to you.
Yes.
You know, years ago, back when we all listened to vinyl, there was a sepia-toned album called Take Me Back, Andre Crouch. And Andre and his sister Sandra sang that thing. Yeah. And I don't quote, but I do reference something I learned from that in the front of one of the songs. He said, people get into trouble talking about religion. He said, I want to share with you that religion is a search for God. Faith is a relationship with God. Whether you're searching for God or whether you think you found God, your faith is your relationship with God, and that you and Shaunie are lifting up faith and culture. You know, when you speak when you speak in the idiomatic sense, that's fact.
Yes.
FAC, that's fact. You know,
yes,
you're teaching fact. You're teaching real, and I love it, and I'm so excited about it. Pastor, let's go 4 for 4, because I know you got a ball game to get to. Yes, so I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and you'll give me 4 answers. There are no wrong answers. And the first question, if we want to get started going 1 for 4, is you get to invite anybody you want to dinner from any time past to present. Who's at your table? 4 people.
Martin Luther King.
And why? And why?
Because I want to know, how did you know you were going to die and still manage to live? I want to know what kind of courage it takes to be under that kind of threat, which is why I would invite Nelson Mandela. Why would you give up your life for the purpose of ascertaining the rights for others' lives? Those 2 individuals are exhilarating me. Barack Obama, to be the first African-American president, but I just admire what I think I know about him as a father and as a husband, as a person. He just seems to be innately good inside and out. And then the last one may be a little unorthodox, but it's my choice. I would sit down with Jay-Z. I think that he's brilliant. I think that he is a cultural icon. I think he transcends normal. And I'm in awe of his mental capacity. So those are the 4 individuals that I would sit down. And you would have been on that list, but I got a chance to do it already. So I had to pick some people that I did.
Oh my goodness, we're at a feast right now. It's a feast for our minds and our hearts. You said earlier, no matter where you lay your head, bring your heart with you. And I just love that. That's still reverberating for me. Let's go 2 for 4. What book, what are you listening to right now musically? What four artists are you listening to musically?
Oh my goodness.
And why? And why? You know, music, I mean, come on. I teach people play the music that takes you where you want to go. So
Yes, and that's exactly what I do. I listen to music that takes me where I want to go. So it's a gumbo. There is something about Maverick City's music with Chandler Moore that resonates with my heart.
yeah.
It just takes me where I want to go. The same thing with elevation music with my friend Steve Furtick. It takes me there. But on the other side, I could listen to Luther Vandross every single day.
You don't even have to say the last name, just Luther.
That's Luther. I can listen to Luther. I just recently found out Luther sang songs so authentically that we forget that all of his songs are covers.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have any original songs, but he just owned the song. And so Luther and this last one, I may have to throw them in as a couple because even though they're individuals, it's hard for me to pick between Marvin Gaye and Al Green. I get somewhere stuck in between the two of those guys.
You've been stealing from my playlist. I will share it openly with you.
Yes, ma'am. I would say that I would see. I like Al Green because he would go from love and happiness to church. Like he could get there.
Yeah.
I like
in the same song half the time if he's going live in the same song.
Yes, and then Marvin Gaye because I don't know his tone. See, I'm a music person. That's hard because I love Whitney Houston. Like I love Whitney Houston. So you said four, but I all of those.
And you know, Marvin Gaye, I think so many people over these last 2+ years were pulling out what's going on and hearing it as relevant to the moment.
Absolutely.
And I heard it. I mean, I was sharing with someone, Pastor, that, you know, we do a lot of work for the military in my company, and we're going to be featured for that in a show coming up. And I was sharing with them my first knowledge of the military was not so much in appreciation for all the good that the military does, but for the sacrifice that families in my community gave to it, because over half of the young men who would have graduated from high school during that time died overseas. You know, our guys were frontline soldiers and we were fighting that way back then. And so Vietnam War, I'm talking about. And so Marvin Gaye touched me in a way very young because of the experience I had lived. You were talking about wisdom, and I believe that wisdom is that beautiful marriage of knowledge and experience. It can be your knowledge or your experience wisely married to someone else's as well. You don't have, you know. And so when you were mentioning the people who you're listening to and who you're loving, it's right off of my playlist. And you can throw a little Holy Live in there too by you know who. Okay, you can throw a little of that in. I think we're going now 3 for 4. Okay. Books other than the Holy Bible, what 4 books do you recommend our family read as must reads if you don't get to read anything else, and why?
Number 1 would be a book by Stephen Covey called The Speed of Trust.
Yeah.
I recommend that book because the premise and the big idea is that whenever you're running an organization or a relationship, anything, any enterprise, when trust is high, cost is low. And whenever you see a business, a relationship, when it doesn't cost so much to make somebody happy, because when the cost is low, it is a reflection of trust being high. So I love that book, How the Mighty Fall, I believe by Jim Collins. And that book is, it gives the 5 stages as to why mighty companies like Circuit City and Kmart, and why they didn't matriculate Sears through time. And there's some hubris in certain things as to why mighty corporations fall. And I think that that's good for anybody who wants to scale and go to the next level. There is another book that I referenced earlier called The Power of Now. And Eckhart Tolle says that nobody, and this is an incredible thought, I'm going to touch it, it won't make sense. You have to read it in its entirety to understand the premise. He says, but nobody experiences pain now. Whenever you experience pain, it's because you have gone too far in the future, or you're so busy trying to go forward that you are discontented with the present. And so the power of now has literally changed my life. And then there is a book that is very difficult to read, but very insightful, and it's called A Course in Miracles. And this book, the writer, and I can't think of her name right now, I believe the writer at one point, she ran for president at some point in time during our recent political history. But the thought upon which and the depth upon which the author wrote about relevant topics and her approach to sustaining change through both a spiritual lens and a practical lens is a book for an avid reader that would just expand your horizons, because I believe that when you are reading a book, you're actually allowing the author to be your mentor, and you're borrowing their knowledge in a moment that took them decades to garner. And so I believe that all authors are mentors when you're reading them, because they give you a decade's worth of knowledge in a day.
Okay, is A Course in Miracles Helen Schuman?
That's the one.
Okay, SCHUCMAN for our family. Yeah, that's beautiful, and that oh wow, yeah, that's beautiful. Maybe you should start a book club as well, Pastor. I'm seriously, for all those followers, put everybody, you know how you're about to go on January 27th and have this, I think, a book club of everybody reading the same thing at the same time can be amazing under your leadership as well. I look forward to everything that you guys are doing. Let's go 4 for 4 now.
4 for 4.
Okay. 4 pieces of advice that you give this family. And if it's advice given to you by someone else, please give homage to the author of it. And thank you.
First piece of advice I learned from Bishop T.D. Jakes. He says, whenever you see somebody who is or has accomplished what you desire, as opposed to competing with them, learn to enjoy the distance. That touched me in a way that I can't express. Wow. You're always trying to catch him. He says, it's the opposite. Enjoy the distance.
Wow.
Number 2, Cato Brooks Jr., the pastor of Tree of Life Missionary Baptist Church in Gary, Indiana. He's passed away, but he said to me, he said, some people come in your life for a reason. Other people come into your life for a season. Your job is to find out which one. Because sometimes people come for a reason, and keeping them too long makes them overstay their season. And you will wreak havoc on your life by having reasoned people in season seats.
Wow.
And that stayed with me for a long time. I can't get away from the quote, and I don't even know who said it. I just read it once and it stayed with me, where you're born looking like your parents, but you die looking like your decisions. I would say, let's look that up so that we can tell the family who the author of that quote is. But it's self-explanatory that you leave this world looking like what you chose, and nobody I mean, nobody escapes the parameters of earth without their choices being exposed through grace and mercy. But you have to take that very, very seriously. I'm sure you're looking it up right now to see.
I'm looking it up, and it looks as though Priscilla Shirer, Shirer, said it on Twitter, but I still have to find out who actually was the author. I see another one by A.R. Bernard, so we'll search that out. We'll search that out.
And that is one mighty man of God and smart individual.
Oh, and so many people have repeated that. It's powerful, yes.
Yeah.
And what's the fourth one?
The fourth one is by a local guy here in Houston who is a mentor of mine, an extremely successful businessman. He'll probably be a billionaire in the next 2 to 5 years. He's just taking off. He's in his late 40s. He said, whenever you meet somebody, if you are good inside, I want you to make them this promise, but you have to mean it. He says, ask them to give you 1% of your trust, and you will earn the other 99. He says, wow. Most of us go in not recognizing the traumatic experiences that people have, so trust is an issue. So the way you disarm that is just ask them, give me 1%. I'll earn the other 99. I say it every Sunday when a new person joins our church. Give me 1% of your trust. I'll earn the other 99. And those are my 4.
Just dropping gems, just dropping gems. Oh my goodness.
I love you so much.
Thank you. Woo, from my heart to your home. Thank you.
I love you so much. You are amazing. You are one of my favorite people. I remember when I saw you in person for the first time at Bishop's Conference, I just stared at you because I thought, number one, you were the validation that Bishop was reaching his goals. And number two, I had no idea that when he reached his goal, that the people, faith and culture, would be as in love with God as we thought we were. And you don't know what your involvement in our lives has meant. And let me tell you, and you should know this, the person that Bishop Jakes is quoting right now is Miss Janice.
Ooh.
When he talks about what he's learning now, and he talks about there is as much distance between you and him as there is with him and I. And that when you talk, it helps him to reshape and recalibrate so many things in his ethos. You are making a mark. I am glad to know you. I cannot wait to figure out how I can serve you better. And I just praise God for our paths crossing.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing this. On the 27th of September, you'll be speaking at Cry Out Conference. And I just know this family is going to be really robustly there. Thank you for sharing this time and your home with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. And hug up on Shaunie for me.
I will. She's waiting on me to go to the game right now.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Go in.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.